Well, here in Berlin, the Russian opposition has held its first major demonstration against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The march was organized by opponents of Russian President Vladimir Putin, including Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Unable to operate at home, Russia's opposition has been forced to relaunch abroad. But tensions among dissidents have hampered their ability to put forward a united front against the Kremlin.
Russia without Putin, a plea, a push for change back home. Driven out by severe repression, three of the most well-known exiled Russians came together in a media scrum to march through Berlin. Yulia Navalnaya, widow of the late Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. On either side of her, Vladimir Kara-Murza and Ilya Yashin, dissidents freed earlier this year from prison. They led around 1,500 people in the first major Russian anti-war march abroad since Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine almost 3 years ago. Thousands of Russians fled to Europe in the aftermath.
We want the war to stop, we want Ukraine to win, we want Russia to stop being a threat for all of the world.
I want us to have an opportunity to speak. Not to be afraid. I want democracy in Russia. I want normal elections in Russia. I want a free country.
Despite the show of unity here, Russia's exiled opposition has no clear plan to actually try and end Putin's regime. It's plagued by bitter infighting, which has ramped up since leader and figurehead Alexei Navalny died in a Russian prison camp in February.
I have no illusion about the degree of unitedness of Russian opposition. Of course, there are some disagreements and different approaches, different ideas, but we agree on main points and main things that Russia's aggression against Ukraine must cease and Russian troops must leave Ukraine immediately.
But many Ukrainians accuse exiled Russians of having been too quiet for too long and not doing enough to support them. Ukraine's ambassador to Germany called Sunday's march a walk without dignity and without consequences. The demonstration, dismissed by the Kremlin as irrelevant, came to an end outside Berlin's Russian embassy in a final show of defiance to Vladimir Putin.
DW political correspondent Simon Young is at the demonstration in the heart of Berlin. Simon, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, as you probably hear, there's a pretty noisy and angry demonstration. Hundreds of people, most of them, of course, people of Russian origin living in Berlin or around Germany, have answered the call of leading dissidents to come through the centre, march through the centre of Berlin today to express the wish for a different Russia, a freer Russia as they call it. And their demands are pretty clear. They say they want an end to the war in Ukraine. They say they want Vladimir Putin put on trial as a war criminal. They want political prisoners who are still in jail, many of them in Russia, to be released. And as I say, they are, well, there are many different kinds of people from different walks of life with different perspectives maybe. The Russian opposition, so to speak, is not united, but they are united today. That's what the message they want to send, that they are united in their opposition to Vladimir Putin and his regime.
Simon, there are many Russians in Berlin, and some number of them surely there today, as you say. I realize it's anecdotal, but what's your sense? Do they, for the most part, oppose the leadership in the Kremlin?
A lot of Russians, many of whom have lived in Germany for decades, still consume a lot of Russian state media, and many of them, particularly the older ones, tend to fall in with the Russian line, at least when it comes to the war in Ukraine, and they're supportive generally of Vladimir Putin, but an increasing number, I think, at least the vocal ones here, the ones who are coming out on the street today, have a very different view. They say it's time for a complete change. The system has to change. Vladimir Putin must go, and Russia needs to be much more like a normal European country as they see it. That's what people are saying, and as you can hear, it's angry, it's impatient. There's frustration that after nearly 3 years of war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin still has a very strong grip on the reins of power there.
In the thick of it, DW political correspondent Simon Young, many thanks.